Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Be Bold America. I'm your host, Jill Cody. Our program today is Who is the Man Behind the Curtain? It's Russell Vought. Who is Russell Vought, you might ask? He is Donald Trump's director of the United States Office of Management and Budget. In other words, he holds the federal purse strings. It is a powerful office with a director who can hide from the public. Russell Vought stated, before becoming the OMB director, "We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains." Public service was once viewed as an honorable profession, and I remember those times. In 1986, Ronald Reagan uttered words that were designed to divide the people from their government. Those words were, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." By the way, I worked for a city at the time and I was there to help. Through the decades, these words have been disastrously effective. Now neighbors and families have been divided. The people and their government have been divided, and many do see public servants as villains. We have big things to do. Our interview guest is Dr. Jenna Norton. Dr. Jenna Norton, a National Institutes of Health employee, has been an outspoken critic of the administration's research cuts. Dr. Norton organized the Bethesda Declaration, a public letter that denounced what its authors viewed as the administration's dismantling of the federal biomedical research apparatus. She sought federal whistleblower protection status because her superiors retaliated against her by putting her on a non-disciplinary administrative leave. Subsequently, she then received a 4-sentence email telling her to return to work, with no reason given for the reinstatement. Dr. Jenna Norton is here on Be Bold America in her personal capacity. Hello, Dr. Norton. Welcome to Be Bold America. It is an honor to have you on the program.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
We are delighted to have you here. Now, Dr. Norton, we have a lot to discuss, and I think a good starting point would be to tell us who is Russell Vought, what is his background, what was his role in Project 2025, and his role now as the federal OMB director.
Absolutely. So I think the things that are important to know about Russell Vought is that he is ideological. He has described himself as a Christian nationalist, which means he believes that the United States should be a Christian nation. He is willing to break the law to achieve his goals for the U.S. government, which don't seem to align with the goals of the people. He is the author, one of the key architects of Project 2025. And if folks recall from the campaign trail, Project 2025 was wildly unpopular. It was so unpopular that Donald Trump actually disavowed it on the campaign trail. Yet this administration is carrying that plan forward to a T. They're actually halfway through the objectives they set out in that plan, and Russell Vought is the one who put that plan together. He's also pushing unitary executive theory, which is a fringe legal theory that tries to pull power away from Congress, away from the people, and put it solely in the hands of the president, effectively making the president a king. He likes to work behind the scenes. So we all remember Elon Musk being up on the stage wielding a chainsaw, but it was Russell Vought who was actually behind the curtain pulling the strings. It was Russell Vought who architected the destruction of the civil service, who outlined the plan to tear down our agencies like USAID, like the Department of Education, and the NIH, where I work. And the last thing I think is really important to know about Russell Vought is that he's a D.C. insider. He got his first job in the mailroom for Senator Phil Gramm of Texas. He advised Mike Pence. And then he transitioned to the regular Heritage Foundation wasn't conservative and aggressive enough for him. So he founded an offshoot of the Heritage Foundation, whose mission was to strong arm Republicans into being more conservative. And so he picked his role at the OMB because he knew it was the place where he could actually pull the most strings and implement his plan to tear down the government and to tear down the civil service.
Was he behind giving Elon Musk ideas?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the sort of credit, if you will, or discredit for the work of tearing down the federal government has gone to Doge, but much of what Doge was carrying out were actually the plans that were laid out in Project 2025 and were plans that were set forth by Russell Vought. And that is why we are so keen on drawing attention to him, because he has operated largely in the shadows without people really being aware of the harm that he's doing to our government, to the services that our government provides to the American people, and therefore to everyone who lives in this country.
Well, to prepare for this interview, I went to the Project 2025 Tracker website, and it stated that 55% of the goals have been completed. Now, that's been in a year and a half, and there were 321 objectives affecting 34 agencies, with 71 objectives still in progress. Only one objective was listed affecting the NIH and is now completed, which was the end or limit fetal stem cell research or use. But what else have you seen done in the NIH that wasn't in Project 2025 that's been completed or in the works?
So one of the other things actually in Project 2025 for NIH was to basically take away the funding for NIH and distribute it to the states in block grants. And that's a really short-sighted and really not well thought out way to do research.
Why would it be short-sighted? Just to be the ask the question.
Absolutely, yeah. So research is an international pursuit. We as scientists regularly work with people not just across the country but all over the globe because it is a shared body of knowledge, right? And so if we are segmenting up research even further to state level, it would be really challenging for one state to know what another state is funding. And it would be really challenging not to fund redundant research. It would really be really challenging to have a broad understanding, across areas of what is being funded. And so distributing science this way would actually be really counterproductive, and it would silo ideas rather than bringing ideas together.
That's the reason why we're the United States of America. There's certain levels that unite us, and we're stronger if we work at that federal level.
Absolutely, yes, stronger together for sure.
Well, what other things has happened to the NIH that wasn't in Project 2025?
So one of the things that has been really sneaky that Russell Vought has been doing is he is trying to basically cut the NIH budget without cutting the NIH budget. And he's done that by mandating, the president in the president's budget request, which comes through the Office of Management and Budget. So it's actually largely written by Russell Vought and his team. In 2025, they asked for a 40% budget cut. In 2026, they asked for a 30% budget. Thankfully, Congress did not give them that. But since they didn't get this huge off-the-top budget cut, what they did instead is they implemented this thing called multi-year funding. And it sounds really wonky, and it kind of is, but basically the long and short of it is you can either fund 4 grants for 1 year apiece, because when NIH normally funds a 5-year grant, we actually give it out in 1 year increments. So we give you your first year's money, then your next year's money next year, then your third year's money in year 3, your fourth year money in year 4, and so on.
And these can be grants, research grants for cancer, very important, looking for very important cures, correct?
That's absolutely right. So at the National Institutes of Health, we fund research that addresses a variety of health issues. We try to seek fundamental knowledge that helps us understand the way the human body works, and then apply that knowledge to actually produce treatments and strategies that prevent illness and overall make the country a healthier place. So we produce the science that allows us to know how to do that. And we do that not just by doing science at the NIH, which does happen, but we also do that by funding universities across the country. And I want to make sure people are clear on that because I think people didn't, I heard somebody say once early on in the destruction of what's been, of our agencies, of the attacks on National Institutes of Health, they were like, oh, it'll be fine because my university will just keep on doing research. But your university is getting the vast majority of its research funding from the National Institutes of Health. So if you see studies going on at your local university, more likely than not, it's being funded by the National Institutes of Health. There are other funders that do fund health research, but NIH is sort of it's the largest funder of biomedical research in the world.
Right, it's foundational, right.
Mm-hmm. And so this multi-year funding policy basically said that instead of funding grants year by year, that we needed to fund the grants all up front. At least half of our money had to fund the grants entirely up front. But the problem is you can either fund 4 grants for 1 year or with the same amount of money, fund roughly 1 grant for 4 years.
Oh, my.
And so basically it put us in a situation of, instead of funding 4 grants, we would fund 1 grant. Because there was no budget increase to go along with this mandate. And so we had a limited pool of money. And in 2025, it actually led to a 24% decrease in new research studies funded by the National Institutes of Health.
Well, why would Russell Vought want to do this? What is the benefit to this administration?
I get that question a lot, and it's always hard to know for sure why people do things, right?
Right.
Unless they tell you, you're guessing. But here's my couple of guesses about why the administration is attacking science. So first of all, science gives us evidence. And when you're an authoritarian, one of the things that you want to do is you want to control information. And evidence is really inconvenient when you want to control the message. Mm-hmm. And so when you have people out there producing evidence that doesn't align with your ideologies, it's harmful to the authoritarian sense of control over information. The second thing, and this is documented really well in Naomi Oreskes' Merchants of Doubt, where science produces evidence that often is used to inform regulations. And industry often doesn't like those regulations because they cut into their profits. And so to give a really concrete example, we'll take cigarette smoke, right? So we started having evidence that cigarette smoke causes cancer in the 1930s-ish. And the body of evidence was growing and growing and growing. And at some point, the tobacco industry was like, oh, my goodness, everybody's going to quit smoking because people don't want to get cancer. What do we do? And instead of, switching to maybe a different product model or switching to something that wouldn't, kill the people who buy your product, what the tobacco industry did is they hired a PR firm, and that PR firm said, we are no longer selling cigarettes, we are selling doubt. Mm-hmm. Doubt is our product. Mm-hmm. And they paid scientists and sponsored scientists to create a false controversy about science, and they said, oh, this science isn't sound science. This is junk science. Just like today we hear this isn't gold standard science coming from the administration. And so basically, if we had listened to public health science, we could have regulated the tobacco industry much sooner. But instead, the tobacco industry manufactured doubt about the science around smoking, and it delayed the regulation around tobacco use and caused untold death. And so this is just a very clear example of how industry will undermine science in order to preserve their profits, even at the expense of public health. We saw the same thing with the hole in the ozone layer, mm-hmm. with acid rain, with climate change, and now they seem to be applying this to science writ large.
Well, it seems to work. And before we go to break, having been very involved with the climate crisis, which has now become the climate breakdown, the Merchants of Doubt, one of the things that people need to realize is doubt doesn't have to prove anything. They just raise the question and beat the question in your head, but there's no evidence, there's no facts. But the thing is it seems to work. And I think even before the tobacco industry using the product of doubt, the chemical industry used it as well. So it's been a tried and true process for these corporations, and people need to realize how they're being manipulated. All right, it is time for a break. You are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 89.5, 89.7, and 90.7 FM. Many voices, one station. Our topic today is, who is the man behind the curtain? It's Russell Vought. And we're speaking with Dr. Jenna Norton, who, I should add, is speaking in her personal capacity to explain the most devastating actions the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russell Vought, is doing to the National Institutes of Health, Science, and other departments throughout the federal government. I'm your host, Jill Cody.
Tom Hartman here. You know how I always say democracy is not a spectator sport? Well, Jill Cody knows the rules of the game, and she delivers it to you straight on Be Bold America, Friday at 5 p.m. right here on KSQD. Jill brings in the best political thinkers of our time who will show you what to keep doing, stop doing, and start doing to support democracy in our world. That's Be Bold America, Friday at 5 p.m., right after the Tom Hartman program, right here on K-Squid, 89.5, 89.7, and 90.7 FM, and ksqd.org. Tag, you're in.
Exploring the intersections of rhythmic music from New Orleans, Kingston, Jamaica, and Havana, Cuba. The Downbeat Shuffle program, Fridays at 6 p.m. on KSQD.
Hey, Squeedies, it's me, Jennifer, from the Zombie Jamboree, and you're listening to KSQD 90.7 FM and KSQD.org. Join us every week at 8 p.m. for your Friday night mixtape, the cornucopia of specially selected songs for your listening pleasure known as the Zombie Jamboree. C-Dub and I always enjoy your company. That's Friday nights at 8 on KSQD 90.7 FM.
We're back, and our topic today is, who is the man behind the curtain? It's Russell Vought, and we're speaking with Dr. Jenna Norton. Dr. Norton is a public health scientist on health equity and data standards. Dr. Norton is here in her personal capacity. Now, Dr. Norton, you have carved out a profile as an outspoken critic of President Trump, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and the NIH director, whose name I can't even pronounce. You participated in weekly protest vigils held on Saturdays just outside the agency's campus and helped organize an event that became part of the nationwide No Kings demonstration in October. An article was written about you this past February in the New York Times about you criticizing Trump and seeking whistleblower protection. Then there was a second article in the New York Times announcing your reinstatement. Will you share with us some of those experiences, what you've gone through?
Sure. So when the Trump administration first came into office in January of 2025, I think it was a really disruptive and challenging time across the federal government and certainly at the National Institutes of Health. They came in and they basically stopped literally everything that we were doing. They canceled our council meetings, which are part of our research funding process, so we're not able to put grants out the door. They barred all external communication. It wasn't even clear if we could speak to our grantees. They started terminating research without warning, and so
Wow.
we called them drone strikes because our grants would just be cut off. And the thing that was really concerning about this is many of these were clinical trials where people were receiving medical interventions, devices, drugs, where the trial would just be abruptly stopped. And some of them were in places and countries without a public health infrastructure to just transfer these patients to get care. And so people were really left in the lurch. These are research participants who had volunteered their bodies to science being put at risk because of the thoughtless careless and harmful policies of the administration. And many of us inside the National Institutes of Health were very concerned by this unethical and harmful, these unethical and harmful actions. And so we started coming together to try to figure out what we could do. And we were hoping our leadership would speak up, but those in our leadership who did speak up were quickly ousted. We were hoping that the public or the larger academic community would speak up, but I think they were just as afraid as us. And eventually it occurred to us that, if somebody was going to speak up, it had to be us, and that we had to do it together. So hundreds of us got together, and we released something called the Bethesda Declaration, which was a letter of concern about these harmful policies we were seeing inside the NIH. And we released that, and actually Jay Bhattacharya, who you alluded to earlier, the director of the NIH, his initial reaction.
How do you pronounce that name again, Dr. Norton?
If I'm pronouncing it, it's Bhattacharya.
He's the director of NIH. Got it.
That's correct. And he said that we were misguided and that we didn't understand what was happening at the NIH, even though we were the people on the ground doing the work. And then he sort of shifted gears and said, you know what, let's have a conversation. He invited many of the signers to a roundtable. He did not include me. I was not invited to come, even though I had been the person who had actually delivered the email to him that was the Bethesda Declaration.
Interesting.
Yes. After we did the Bethesda, so we had this meeting with him, we raised our concerns, which were very, valid concerns about ethical violations, about money being wasted when you're terminating research studies 3 or 4 years in, because when you terminate a 5-year study at year 3 or 4, you're not saving the last $1 or $2 million. You're actually wasting the $3 or $4 million that you've already invested. And so we brought forward many of these concerns, and he, listened, I'm told, from those who were in the room, but then he did nothing to change what was happening at the NIH. So we kept on speaking up because people were getting hurt. And as you said in your intro, people go into civil service because we are here to help.
Yes.
And we're for the most part very mission-driven people. We have chosen these positions, often taking pay cuts, making less money than we would in the private industry because we care about the mission of our agencies. And
because there's more in life than money. It's
100%.
It's purpose and leading a meaningful life. And
Absolutely.
People go to public service to have meaning and to be able to provide meaningful services to others to make their lives better. Go ahead. That's my rant.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, I feel that completely. And I think, that is the sense that I get from the vast majority of my colleagues in federal government. And I've worked in private sector as well. So, I think a lot of people are mission-driven in private sector as well. So it's not unique to government. But I do think there is a sort of a special service role for people who work in government. And we were just really upset and disturbed by the fact that we were raising these really glaring issues and that our leadership was refusing to address them. So we kept speaking up, and I in particular got a little bit more attention in the media speaking out. Mm-hmm. I assume that is why the administration eventually put me on administrative leave.
And they called it non-disciplinary administrative leave. What is that?
So it is not a real thing.
No, I didn't think so.
You're being put on administrative leave. This is not for disciplinary purposes. But they gave no other reason for it, except an anonymous HHS official was quoted in the New York Times as saying that I was put on leave because I had criticized the Trump administration while I should have been working, which wasn't the first part was true. The latter part wasn't true because I'm very careful to keep my.
You were doing it on your own time, right?
Yes, I spent a lot of nights and weekends working on these issues because I care about them.
And you have small children and a family too, so you're doing this on top of that.
Yes. And, honestly, it's become a little bit of a family pursuit. My kids and my husband often join me at our weekly vigils outside of NIH. And so I'm very pleased and proud to have a supportive family in these efforts. But so I was given no explanation. I was put on administrative leave the first day back from the government shutdown. So it was November 13th. So I'd already been out of work along with all other federal workers for 43 days. I came back. I was there about half a day. I received this notice, and then I was on administrative leave with no word from the agency for more than 5 months.
Wow.
And then on May 1st.
Without pay, correct?
No, I was paid.
You were being paid. Okay, good.
Yes, and I am very grateful that I was paid. It would have been much more challenging for me had I not been paid. But it's also such a waste of money. I mean, I was paid and not allowed to work for 5 months, and that has been the hallmark of this administration, is just wasting government resources left and right. They came in under this banner of efficiency.
Wasting taxpayer dollars.
Yes, and I think the estimate that I saw is that they have paid $7 billion with a B dollars paying federal workers not to work since they have come in. Oh. And that includes like the fork in the road and the probationary terminations where people were on administrative leave for several months while that was litigated. It includes the unlawful rifts where people were also on administrative leave for an extended period of time, other incentivized retirement programs. And so in total, and then people like me who they put on punitive administrative leave. There were others at NIH who were put on leave for more than 14 months simply because they had worked in offices or roles that the administration did not endorse from an ideological perspective. So people from our sexual and gender minority research office and people from our diversity offices were on leave for something like 14 months with pay.
This just makes my head explode.
It is wild. You could
talk about waste, fraud, and abuse.
Exactly. And so I, on May Day, I think a very fitting day, it's like the International Labor Day, I received a notice saying that I was being reinstated. I was not given an explanation then either. And the other thing that happened during this period is Jay Bhattacharya, the director of the NIH. So in addition to the anonymous HHS official who said I was put on leave for criticizing Trump, Jay Bhattacharya, the director of the NIH, said that I had that this was the second time I was investigated by the NIH, which is sort of silly because they specifically did not put me on investigative leave. They put me on sort of regular administrative leave, not for disciplinary purposes. They said this was the second time I had been investigated by the NIH, and that I had previously been investigated for violating the Anti-Deficiency Act, which is basically a fancy way of saying I spent the government's money without permission.
What?
Which is a wild claim because I don't even have that authority. And I had never personally heard of myself being investigated. I checked with my direct supervisor. He had never heard of me being investigated for anything. And I also checked with my administrative officer, which is like our HR person, and she had never heard of me being investigated for anything. I had received perfect scores on all of my performance evaluations the entire time I've been a federal employee. And so it was all just wild. He basically made up a lie about me in the past.
Yeah, they all lie, and it's emotional abuse. Because look what you had to do and how you felt. Mm-hmm.
It was very scary at the time because I didn't, looking around. I mean, this administration has brought frivolous cases against civil servants. Looking at what is happening to Anthony Fauci right now, it did not feel unreasonable to think that they might. Bring this forward as a more formal accusation. Thankfully, they have not done that, and as a matter of fact, I have been reinstated, which I sort of take as it might be the closest thing to an apology that I will get, but it's sort of an admission that none of this was ever merited. The fact that I've been brought back.
Well, you are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 89.5, 89.7, and 90.7 FM. Many voices, one station. If you're just joining us, our topic today is, who is the man behind the curtain? It's Russell Vought. And we are speaking with Dr. Jenna Norton, who is a program director at the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases. Now, Dr. Norton, I have something special for you. Louise Hartman has been writing political lyrics for our times and putting them to music, and I think I found one that fits our topic. It's called The Authoritarian Playbook, and I'd like you to listen and give me your take on the other side. There may also be some promos too, but I'd love to get your take on the other side.
If you interrupt the dreaming, they won't realize they're awake.
When you wake up, do you sometimes have dreams ringing in your head? What treasures might be hiding in those crazy stories? I am Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and I am passionate about dreams. The Dream Journal is a weekly live show where we explore the transformative powers of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with call-ins from listeners like you. Join us Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock or look for us out in podcast land. The Dream Journal from KSQD in Santa Cruz.
Hey, Squeedies, it's me, Jennifer, from the Zombie Jamboree, and you're listening to KSQD 90.7 FM and KSQD.org. Join us every week at 8 p.m. for your Friday night mixtape, the cornucopia of specially selected songs for your listening pleasure known as the Zombie Jamboree. C-Dub and I always enjoy your company. That's Friday nights at 8 on KSQD 90.7 FM.
They don't come marching with a drum and a gun. They smile for the cameras, say the number one. They wrap themselves in freedom while they're tightening the chain, calling fear virtue, calling power common sense. You don't lose a country all at once, you lose it line by line. Control information, intimidate opponents, capture institutions, rewrite reality. One check, another check, till freedom's just a memory. Control information, intimidate opponents, capture institutions, rewrite reality. They'll tell you truth's the enemy, they'll tell you not to trust your eyes, turn your neighbor into danger, turn your questions into crimes. The courthouse bends, the headlines fade, the flag still waves. But something changed. Control information, intimidate opponents, capture institutions, rewrite reality. One check, another check, till no one's left to disagree. Control information, intimidate opponents, capture institutions, rewrite reality. History whispers before it screams. Every tyrant starts with the same old dream. They don't steal tomorrow in a single night. They teach good people not to fight. Control information, intimidate opponents, capture institutions, rewrite reality. Don't look away, don't wait your turn. A country dies when its people never learn. Control information, intimidate opponents, capture institutions, rewrite reality. Read the signs, hold the line. The playbook only works if we forget it's been written before
Dr. Norton, we just heard Louise Hartman's song, The Authoritarian Playbook. Have you any thoughts to share with us after hearing it?
Yeah, it brings up a couple of things for me. First of all, we've already talked about control formation earlier, so I'll skip that one, but that one definitely struck a chord. But the other piece is the intimidation that the administration uses. So one of the things that they did at the NIH when they came in is they started out by sending threatening emails that actually pitted us against our colleagues. And so This one email in particular that we got told us that if we knew of a colleague who was continuing to carry out DEI work, that if we were found to have not told on them, basically, that we would get in trouble. And so it sets up this situation where you start to wonder, are my colleagues, if I do something that they might perceive as DEI, and by the way, I oversee health disparities research, which has come under attack by this administration falsely as DEI. DEI is also really important for the record. I think having diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforces is critical. But the work that I do is health disparities. And so, but I personally did have this fear, our colleagues or people that I work with going to be so afraid that they will, basically throw me under the bus. And thankfully, none of my colleagues did that. And I knew it was a rational fear. I didn't think it would happen. But, that I think is one of the tactics that this administration has used.
Well, it turns everybody into a spy.
Exactly.
And Hitler did that.
Exactly.
I mean, talk about authoritarian. That's dictatorship. I mean, that is just unconscionable to me. And to disrupt the team, to break you apart as a group of people working together. Holy.
Exactly. And not only to fear the administration itself, but to fear the people around you.
To fear your other employees.
And so that intimidation piece really stuck out to me. And the other thing that stuck out to me is the lines about rewriting reality and not trusting your eyes, because we have seen so much gaslighting from this administration. One of the things that has happened inside the National Institutes of Health is they have required us to censor every single grant that goes out the door. And there is a literal list of words, and they call them, there's a policy, and it's actually been leaked in Science, so people can go look it up if they would like, but it basically says that words, that grants have to be scanned for, quote, terms potentially associated with the misalignment of agency priorities. And so as program officers, when this first started happening, we were like, they are banning words. That's what it is. They are effectively banning words. Like, if you want to get funded, there are certain words that you cannot put in your research. You cannot talk about discrimination. You cannot talk about structural racism. You cannot talk about Latinx people. Certain words, they will not. And now policy and social determinants of health.
I also understand they won't let you say the words climate change either.
Yes, that is correct. Climate change is also among the banned words list. But when we, as program officers, started to go out and speak publicly as a right under Pickering versus Board of Education, Jay Bhattacharya went out and said there are no banned words, that the program officers are making them up. And it's gaslighting in sort of this way. And there are moments where you start to feel crazy. You're like, am I making it up? Am I losing my mind? And then it's really powerful. One of the things, we talked earlier about the Bethesda Declaration, but one of the pieces I didn't emphasize is the community that we built through the Bethesda Declaration. And one of the reasons it's so important is because that is the antidote to this gaslighting, is to have people who you can go to and say, am I crazy? And they can say, no, we're in this together. And, you can trust what your eyes are seeing. And so that part of the song also really resonated with me.
Oh, my. You talked earlier about him being sneaky, but you also mentioned in one of your interviews about Russell Vought about his dirty budget tricks. And his latest dirty trick attempt is to destroy American science and federally funded research grants with a new rule titled Regulation for Federal Financial Assistance. Sounds very nerdy. That is a direct threat to scientific independence, public health, and evidence-based decision-making. Vought stated, quote, "The test will be a simple one." That's for this rule. "The test will be a simple one. Are you sufficiently loyal to the president? If the answer is no, it will result in the denial of life-saving disaster relief, funding for research into cures, the closure of Head Start offices, etc." And an article written by Stephen Prager of Common Dreams, referring to the rule, he stated, "This is not grant reform. It is a blueprint for a spoils system applied to federal science funding and is a recipe for correction on never-before-seen scale." Dr. Norton, can you give us an update on this proposed rule now that the comment period is over? And how does this rule affect future cures?
Absolutely. So this rule would be absolutely catastrophic for science if it is fully implemented. Many of the things that are actually in this proposed rule are already happening at the NIH. So this politicization of research, where instead of scientists making the decisions about what gets funded, these decisions are being shifted into the hands of political appointees who are making decisions not based on the science, but based on political ideology. And one of the things that this rule does is it actually codifies that and makes it harder to bring legal challenges against that. So thus far, when legal challenges have been brought forward about the grants being terminated out of the NIH and out of other federal agencies, the agencies have actually lost. What they have been doing has been found to be unlawful. Yet, this proposed rule would try to cement these processes that these agencies are using into the regulations, and regulations carry the weight of law, and that's what makes this so dangerous. So this proposed rule completely undermines scientific peer review. It allows federal agencies to make funding decisions based on political ideology. And we actually just saw in a recent case brought by the University of California faculty that the government admitted that they had redirected funding based on the political affiliation, basically based on who the people in that community had voted for. And if people had not voted for Trump, their programs were cut. And so the administration is already doing this, and this proposed federal financial assistance rule would actually codify it and make it part of regulations, make this sort of part of normal business. And so right now, there is some language in the Senate version of the appropriations bill that would prevent this rule from being implemented. But right now it is not in the House version of the appropriations bill. And these things are going to be negotiated. The other thing I should make clear is that it would prevent its implementation during the continuing resolution period. So it would be a reprieve through December 11th. It's still really helpful because it would get us through the elections at least. And so it's really important that there is some restriction on implementing this rule in the appropriations in the whatever appropriation bill moves forward. And so it's really important that folks call their members of Congress, both in the Senate and in the House, to make sure this language ends up in the final package. Because if this gets implemented, and Russell Vought has said that it's his goal to implement this by the end of the fiscal year. So it would be absolutely devastating for science.
So the bottom line is that decisions would be made not based on science, but based on political appointees.
Political appointees, political ideology based on the non-scientific ideas that are brought forward by this administration, right? So ideas that deny the evidence surrounding climate change, ideas that deny the evidence surrounding vaccines, ideas that deny the humanity of certain segments of our population, racial and ethnic minority groups, gender minority groups. It would just allow the administration to basically decide who counts in this country. And basically, based on the track record they have shown, that will be white men who voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
They're the only people who are going to be able to access federal services under this paradigm. And it sounds, even as I say that out loud, I feel like almost absurd saying it because it sounds absurd. But this is what their track record shows. They have actually denied funding to locations simply because they did not vote for Trump.
Right. It's time for a break. You're listening to Be Bold America, Many Voices, One Station, and we're speaking with Dr. Jenna Norton on her experiences working at the National Institutes of Health. Dr. Norton is here in her personal capacity. I'm your host, Jill Cody.
Bam, bam, bee, 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 boom, bam, bam, bee, 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 boom, bam.
Exploring the intersections of rhythmic music from New Orleans, Kingston, Jamaica, and Havana, Cuba. The Downbeat Shuffle program, Fridays at 6 p.m. on KSQT.
Hey, Squeedies, it's me, Jennifer, from the Zombie Jamboree, and you're listening to KSQD 90.7 FM and KSQD.org. Join us every week at 8 p.m. for your Friday night mixtape, the cornucopia of specially selected songs for your listening pleasure known as the Zombie Jamboree. C-Dub and I always enjoy your company. That's Friday nights at 8 on KSQD 90.7 FM.
Our topic today is, who is the man behind the curtain? It's Russell Vought. And we're speaking with Dr. Jenna Norton, who, and it is important to know, is speaking in her personal capacity to explain the most devastating actions the director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russell Vought, is doing to the National Institutes of Health, Science, and other departments throughout the federal government. Now, Dr. Norton, this might be a good time because on August 6th, one of our congresswomen from the state of California introduced articles of impeachment against the OMB director, Russell Vought, after the administration admitted to canceling federal funding to Democratic states based solely on political criteria, including how they voted in the 2024 election. This would affect 79 projects in the state of California that are at risk of losing funding.
Yeah, so this we were thrilled to see this news coming out of Representative Kamlager Dove's office. So she has basically called for Russell Vought to be impeached. She's released articles of impeachment to hopefully impeach and convict and remove him from office. And this is something that many of us in the federal workforce have been calling for. We actually have an entire petition that has been signed by over 2,500 people to this point, by people from more than 60 federal agencies, because we have seen in our frontline roles the damage that Russell Vought is doing across the government by disrupting the services that go to everybody who lives in this country. And, we've talked a lot about the harm that's been happening at the National Institutes of Health, but this is happening across the board. He's also tried to bring the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, tried to get rid of that entirely multiple times so far. Thankfully, thanks to the great work of the union folks over there, he has been unsuccessful. But this is an agency that defends consumers from big corporations. So when the average person gets taken advantage of by a big corporation, it's the CFPB who goes to bat for them. And he's trying to take that protection away from the American people. And there's really just no good justification for it. And so we have been watching this happen from all across our different agencies of the government, and actually drafted a letter urging members of Congress to impeach Russell Vought because of the harm he is doing to the American people and because of the unlawful actions he has taken. So he has violated the Impoundment Control Act. He's basically unlawfully prevented federal agencies from spending the money that was appropriated to them by Congress. And it's Congress in our Constitution who actually sets the priorities for these agencies and determines how the public's money gets spent. And so he has been undermining the Constitution, undermining Congress's power of the purse to the detriment of the American people. And so that is why we have been calling for his impeachment, and that's why we are so thrilled to see these articles of impeachment come forward.
Now, I know they won't go anywhere with this Congress. However, it's out there. It's getting attention. It raises people's awareness about who Russell Vought is and what he's doing. And when the Democrats take the Congress next year, maybe it will get passed. Now, Dr. Norton, it's a tradition on Be Bold America at this point of the interview to ask our guests what they think our listeners could keep doing, stop doing, and start doing. Our future depends on it. So as they relate to our discussion of who Russell Vought is and what he's accomplishing behind the curtain, what do you think we could keep doing?
So I think in terms of keep doing, I think we need to keep speaking up. I really appreciate, Jill, the way you have been speaking up on this show. And we've seen so many other people across the country come and speak up about the harms and the concerns that they are seeing and that they have about the way this administration is running the country. And now everybody here has just learned a little bit more about Russell Vought and the harm he's doing. And so keep speaking up and add to that speech calls for Russell Vought to be removed.
And what do you think we should stop doing?
I think the thing we should stop doing is forgetting to think about the risk of inaction. I think a lot of people in this environment of fear think a lot about the risk of taking an action, the risk of speaking up, and it keeps them quiet because they're afraid of retaliation or they're afraid of, making their neighbors upset or their friends upset or ruffling feathers. But I think a lot of people forget to think that inaction comes with risks too. And in this case, the risk of inaction is that we continue this creep toward authoritarianism, that people like Russell Vought continue to harm the American public. And so I would like people to stop ignoring the risk that comes with silence and inaction.
Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny, he talks about resistance, and the very first one is don't obey in advance. Yeah. So we need to keep... don't give up our voices. Keep our voices and use them. And finally, what do you? Yeah, and that's what you've been doing. That's right. Mm-hmm. And finally, what do you think we could start doing?
So I guess, and this may be variable for everybody because different people are doing different things. One thing I would love everybody to start right away is to go and sign our petition. So you can go to impeachvote.com. That's IMPEACHVOUGHT.com. And from there, you can get a link to our action network and add your name to our call to senators and representatives to impeach, convict, and remove Russell Vought from office. And along with that, call your senators and representatives. I know many of you have likely already been doing that, but when you call, add to your list of concerns the things that Russell Vought has been doing, and in particular, add to that list this proposed federal financial assistance rule that we talked about, because Russell Vought is intent on implementing this rule despite huge numbers of objections during the comment period. And the only group of people that can stop it from being implemented are members of Congress. They have the power to stop its implementation, but we need to demonstrate the public will, that there is public will behind stopping the implementation of this rule. And we also need to demonstrate, and that's the purpose of our petition, that there is public will behind removing Russell Vought from his role as director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Good. I just have, before I go to what's coming up next on Be Bold America, I have about 1 minute. I wanted to ask you, Brene Brown said that you can't get to courage without walking through vulnerability. And I know I personally had to make that walk. How about you, Dr. Norton? You've been through pressures that I can't even imagine. Did you find you had to make that walk from vulnerability to where you are today?
Absolutely. There's a kid's book that I've read to my kids that actually says you can't be courageous, you can't be brave if you're not afraid. Fear is a prerequisite to bravery, because if you do something and you weren't ever afraid, that's not bravery. That's just being, right? And so that fear has to come first in order for there to be the space for bravery. And I think many of us are braver than we think. And where I personally draw my bravery from is from my people, from my community. That's, my kids and my husband and my colleagues at the NIH who have come together. And when you come together and you form that community, it pushes back against the gaslighting, it pushes back against the fear, and it allows you to find that courage despite the fear.
Well, and the thing is that courage isn't the absence of fear. You just walk through it. Thank you for being our bold guest, Dr. Norton. You inspire me, and I know those who are listening, to be as courageous as you've been. It has been a pleasure hosting you on Be Bold America. Please continue the fight. We all stand with you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
It was a pleasure having you here for an interview. Thank you. What's up next on Be Bold America? Please join Be Bold America's co-host, Mike Clancy, on Friday, August 21st at 5 p.m. when Mike will be interviewing Betsy Rosenberg, host of the YouTube channel Code Green. Betsy is a broadcast journalist who was a CBS radio anchor in New York City and a host of Trash Talk, an Echo series on KCBS in San Francisco. In addition, Betsy Rosenberg is a chapter author in my book, Climate Abandoned, We're on the Endangered Species List, having written the chapter on the climate crisis and the media. So please join host Mike Clancy for Code Green is Code Red by listening to Be Bold America Friday, August 21st at 5 p.m. Be Bold America's interviews become a podcast too. Subscribe for free from your favorite podcast platform. You are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz and KSQT Prunedale. Many voices, one station. Listen worldwide online at ksqd.org. My name is Jill Cody, and I want to thank you for listening to Be Bold America. Until next time, keep, stop, start.